complete command of the set. The turnaround was astonishing. But, as John tells us in these pages, it was a double life. He'd grown used to sucking it up and toughing it out, to hoisting a smile and keeping the chatter going. Professionally, it wasn't an act. John truly loved broadcasting at his front row seat to major sporting milestones. He truly enjoyed the coaches and fellow broadcasters he called his friends. But you cannot lose your shadow, no matter how they adjust the lights. And John's shadow of early abuse and teenaged depression dogged him as an adult. His attempts at treatment remained largely a secret, as did certain hospital stays and dark battles with suicidal thoughts. But this was who John Saunders was, along with his much-admired professional reputation. And not long ago, he decided to come clean, to tell his story, demons and all. So he worked with John Bacon and wrote this book. And then he died. When we got the news that John was gone at the too early age of 61, we were stunned. We just saw him. He seemed fine. He seemed happy. After finding our footing, the panelists on The Sports Reporters and its longtime producer, Joe Valerio, all agreed. The entire Sunday show would be about John. That's pretty rare, to dedicate a full show to a host, but The Sports Reporters was a kind of family, and we all felt that strongly about the man. Still, I can tell you that, even as we prepared our topics, we didn't know exactly how John died. It was shrouded in a certain mystery, the way, it turns out, much of his life had been. Our tributes to him were laudatory, highlighting his gifts, his talent, his patience, his wisdom, his loyalty, his friendship, his big voice, and even bigger heart. But we barely mentioned his depression. We didn't talk about the battle of his life. That is a story only John could tell. And as it turned out, he had just finished telling it, to the written page. And so you have it here. I could spend endless words talking about John, the conversationalist, John, the funny storyteller, John, the loyal Canadian, arguing for more hockey topics, John, the father, who got teary-eyed when he spoke about his daughter's accomplishments. But only John can tell you his real story, because so much of it was inside his mind, a wrestling match between the majesty of living life and the tempting peace of ending its pain. It took him to the brink, to hospitals, to a bridge over troubled waters. He almost jumped. But he brought himself back home. Remember this, John planned on living, which means he fully intended to discuss this book, to speak openly about his revelations, to take them with him for the rest of his years, every time he sat behind a microphone and in front of a camera, to live openly with what he termed the mental illness that had plagued him. That, friends, is an incredible act of courage. As it turns out, it was his last, and his most important. This book is not just the journey of a man, his loves, his talents, his road to success. It is also a cautionary tale to others with John's problems, and an open embrace to those battling their own demons, a way of saying, you are not alone. You never felt alone with John. He lifted you up, made you feel good, made you happy about this thing we call the human race, because he was the most human of us, the most decent, and, as it turns out, most brave. I said this book was revelatory. The biggest revelation is that, come the final page, you have even more admiration for John Saunders than you had coming in. That, for those of us who knew and loved him, is a pretty amazing feat. Mitch Albom, author, journalist, longtime panelist, ESPN's The Sports Reporters. Author's note. After John Saunders passed away in August of 2016, I continued to work on the manuscript with the help of his family, friends, and physicians. But in the end, this is John's story, told from his point of view, based primarily on his recollections. Of course, memories can differ. Also, while the events depicted here are true, some names and identifying details have been changed, and some dialogue has been reconstructed. John U. Bacon. Preface. Looking over the edge. It was mid-February 2012, the time of year when we Northerners become convinced that winter will never end. For me,